Welcome to Chaos to Calm. You have adopted and the honeymoon is over. We are your hosts, Jody Randolph,
And Cindy Schultz.
offering practical advice and natural solutions to adoptive moms while maintaining your sanity. So today,
Yes.
one of the things that disrupts our sanity is a dysregulated child.
Right.
So what happens when our children don't meet expectations and become dysregulated? I know in our house, that was screaming, meltdowns.
Meltdowns, mean words.
Meltdowns
Yeah.
was a mild word for what we were experiencing.
Yep. Slamming doors, kicking, hurting people, saying mean
Yes.
things just to.
Just because
Yeah.
emotions are out of control and they can't deal with what they're feeling.
Right.
Usually ours was triggered by the word no,
Uh-huh.
which I know in talking with a lot of other adoptive moms, that is a big trigger, is that word no.
Yeah.
We also had triggers of sugar,
Yeah.
red dyes.
Triggers can be just a change.
Overstimulated.
Yeah. An extra person.
Change in schedule.
Yes. It can be I'm trying
bad
so
day at
hard.
school.
Yeah, it could be I'm trying so hard to hold it together, and then finally, out of the most minimal little situation, I explode because I've been working so hard.
Right. And trying to do their best, but maybe don't always have what it takes to get the job done properly.
Right. Right. Needing a little assistance there.
So when our children become dysregulated or out of control emotionally, I think it's important. There's some questions I think we can ask ourselves as moms. First of all, were we expecting something that was neurotypical and our child who has trauma or FAS or other invisible disabilities is not able to do that?
Right.
Are we expecting something that's
beyond their capability at that moment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do they have the skills to meet that expectation?
Right.
Sometimes we think they have the skills and they don't.
Yeah.
Or sometimes we think that they should be presenting as their chronological age, emotionally and intellectually.
Right.
And they're emotionally back at 3 years earlier.
Yeah.
So if they're 10, they may be thinking emotionally at 7.
Yeah.
And we forget and we expect the 10.
Right. Right.
Yeah, which then they can't do and they have a meltdown.
Right.
It's not that they don't want to.
Yeah.
but they just can't.
Yeah. I think sometimes it goes opposite too, is sometimes our expectations are a little lower, especially, I have a couple kids with Down syndrome and people tend to expect minimal from them when actually they are much more capable. And so that can also cause a disruption or some kind of a dysregulation or an emotional response to just being underestimated.
Right.
Instead of being overestimated.
Right. And can be a trigger for them.
Yeah.
We also need to ask ourselves, have we had an overwhelming or busy day? What is overwhelming to us as moms? Let me rephrase that. What is not overwhelming to us as moms may be overwhelming to our kids.
Right.
There may be too much extra stimulation there. There may be too many directions in a row that they can't deal with. I know particularly with children with FASD, it is important, especially when they're younger, to give them one direction at a time.
Right.
Because their brains cannot handle more than one, and they will always do the last instruction. Which means that as the mom, all of a sudden you're frustrated and you yourself are becoming dysregulated because they're not following directions, but they're not in a spot where they can mentally follow more than one direction at a time.
Right.
And so removing that expectation and just giving them one direction at a time removes the frustration on our part as the mom,
Yeah.
but also makes it so that our child can succeed.
Right. Setting them up for success.
Right.
Is good.
And we need to ask them, well, what is the expectation? What was the expectation reasonable for their age, which we just kind of talked about a little bit. And do they have the skills to meet that expectation?
Right. Yeah.
If they don't have the skills, we need to be helping them.
Exactly.
We need to be either changing the expectation or helping them work through it so that they do have the skill.
Right. And taking that time, often we start, they don't do what we've told them to do or whatever. And then the temptation to get frustrated and have an emotional response to that is strong, especially if you're trying to get dinner done and trying to do this and somebody's talking to you and somebody has questions about their homework and the dog's doing something or whatever. It's easy to go straight to that emotional response. So,
and then you end up in more than one moment of chaos.
Right. Right. But where we can have that opportunity to maintain our regulation and go and walk over to the child. Sometimes I just put my hands on cheeks and I say, or I have some kind of personal contact. A lot of times it's, hold my hands with my younger ones. I would not do that to my 16-year-old, right. But my younger ones, so that I know that they're focusing on me, I have them hold my hands. Right. Or if you can see that the emotion is like right there. Sometimes I put my hands on their cheeks or to direct their face. Yeah. And so they have that gentle touch. And so and then I can say, okay, what can we do? Let's take a breath. Breathing is a big
forget
thing.
To breathe.
Right. And we actually, this is something that we started doing every morning and it helps. So when we get our kids up for school, they all funnel out to our big old sectional couch. And so everybody's sitting on the couch and then Dad prays. And afterwards, I help everybody, we call them belly breaths, just to breathe in, make sure your belly is extending, breathe out. And I do that 5 times and it gets that oxygen to your brain. It helps you to think clearly. And it really just starts everybody off with some kind of level attitude. Right. And I feel it. Yeah. And my husband, I'm sure at first he was like going, whatever, and I do have, it's funny. I have a kiddo or two that will avoid it, but always in the midst, I hear them yawning. And I'm like, God is making you take belly breaths, because that's what a yawn is getting that oxygen to your brain. So if you can be proactive and breathe, and it's, it really works. And I challenge whoever's listening, take a few minutes, take a few seconds right now and just take a big deep breath inside in through your nose, blow it out, and do that 5 times and you're going to feel a difference.
Right. Yeah, because you're getting that oxygen going.
Yeah.
That's a great way to start the day. We started our day with, they would get up and head down to my room and we would put our oils on. And that was the first thing before they got dressed, is putting on those oils that they needed for the morning and for the day to help keep them grounded. All that. Which with your kids all out there on the couch, that would be a great way to just, okay, here you go.
Yeah.
And I would just dole it out.
Hold your hand out, rub your feet. I'm not touching all your feet.
That's right. That was my thought too.
I don't know where those feet have been. I don't know.
But I think there's, along with that, there's some other things that we can do to help change our expectations so that we're not getting sucked into that drama that comes when the meltdown starts.
That emotional whirlpool.
And a lot of times it starts with arguing or fussing about being told no or whatever, and you get pulled in as you're trying to help calm, or you think you're trying to help calm, and then before you know it, it just escalates and they're screaming and whatever. I think remembering to meet our children where they're at with love and patience. As a mom, if I expect that there's going to be meltdowns, it's easier to meet it with patience.
Right.
Whereas if I'm going through my day thinking, oh, this is going great, no one's having a problem, and then all of a sudden, boom, somebody has a problem, and our emotions as moms, we get let down because, oh, it was going so great. What did I do? What happened? And now we've just our day is turned upside down and we feel like we've had a bad day.
And we get sucked into that emotion of we're a failure. We do.
And we can't let ourselves do that. That's just the enemy trying to defeat us as moms. And so if we can change our expectations so we go in with that love and patience and expecting that the meltdowns are going to happen and thinking it through, like, what am I going to do the next time the meltdown happens? Right. What's my process going to be to help my child become regulated? Yeah. One of those key things I know now that I didn't know then is bring out your essential oils. Get it in the diffuser if you can't get it on your child. Put it on your own self and on your hands, because as you're touching their face to help them deregulate, or you're giving them a hug, or you're, whatever you're doing, talking with your hands or whatever you're doing, they're going to feel or smell those smells, and it's going to help the process. Yeah. We need to allow them space to work through their meltdown. Right. Whether that's going to their room, okay, when you're done, come talk to me. Whatever it is, we realized for meltdowns for us with that FASD piece, it looked like cycling through. And it would peak, and then you'd get to a certain point, and you could tell that it was almost done. And so we learned that during that cycle of that meltdown, it was best for us as parents not to try to talk. Right. Just to allow the screaming. But the screaming, we did have boundaries. The screaming had to be done in the child's room. Yeah. And preferably with the door closed. Right. But which didn't, it might have taken the edge off the screaming, but it doesn't, people can hear them screaming out loud. Yeah. Your walls are not going to keep that. Right. But giving them that space to work through that and to cycle through their meltdown, if it's a cycle, so that they can be in a space where they're ready for you to hug them and talk through where they can receive. Happened. Yeah, where they can receive. It's, it just makes sense. Us as adults, we don't want anybody trying to fix us when we're mad. We just want events. I know. It's like, give me a moment. Let me let me have time by myself. And that's what, and imagine how they're getting more in tune with their body. Right. And how they're getting more in tune with their thoughts and their emotions when they are being able to work through it themselves. Right. Now, there are times where you do need to assist them if it's dangerous, if they're going to harm themselves or harm someone else, or cause serious damage. Yes. Exactly. It is not okay for a child to be punching holes in walls. No, it is not. And so that's, as parents, we need to step in at that point and almost, I don't want to say force the calm, but we do need to maintain some kind of control there, because the child ultimately wants control, because they don't have it themselves, and they get scared because they are out of control. And you're right. Like when they're out of control, there's a lot of fear in that as well. And that instability of what's happening with their emotions. Right. And whether it is you being in control by sending them to their room, talking calmly and saying, and being respectful of their emotions, and or it's having that actual physical control. Right. That you have to judge. There were times I remember just sitting in my child's room while the screaming was happening. Because that's where I needed to be. That's not where I wanted to be. Right. Let me assure you. Right. But that's where I needed to be. There were times where the child had to be held so that, they could feel safe, but they were still screaming. Right. Or crying or whatever it was. Right. Those are, it's challenging. Even as I'm talking about this, I'm getting, a little anxiety there. A little anxiety, because those are hard moments. Yeah. We're not talking typical 2-year-old tantrum.
Right.
We're talking major screaming, anger issues that are caused by trauma. They're caused by the FASD. And, or I know ADHD also has some of those emotions, but these are big emotions and big drama for the kids and for the family.
Right. And when you're talking,
and you have to just as the parent maintain that calm, even though you'd like to go outside and scream yourself because of your child can't bring it in control,
right?
And you do everything that you can. And so that's why I think having a plan and knowing how you're going to deal with the situation the next time is huge. Because even if you don't make it through your plan because the child reacts differently than what you thought, at least you have tried and at least you've started and you can reevaluate it and try again or have multiple plans for different situations.
Right. Totally.
Yeah. Adjusting our I guess I was just kind of talking about that. Adjusting our expectations and helping them be successful with the task at hand, which is usually getting them through the meltdown.
Right.
Because everything else goes out the window. They may be having a meltdown because they refuse to follow directions. But making them follow directions at that point goes out the window. That's not your task at hand. It is getting them through the meltdown.
Right. Right. I know that we had, okay, so this is just like a little tiny instance of this. We had a child that hated sitting in a high chair, hated it. But this child, if they were in a regular chair, would get down and wander around restaurants and stuff like that. So that child needed to be in a high chair because it was for that child's safety. It was for everybody else's, to
be able to eat your dinner.
To be able to eat your dinner. Yeah. And so inevitably, this child would put them in a high chair, meltdown would start. And my husband would literally pick up the entire high chair, walk outside, sit down, set the high chair down and say, when you're ready to go back in, we'll go back in. And then when that child was done, pick up the high chair and bring it back in. And I think that it was super important for the kiddo to see that consistency and to understand that there's boundaries. You don't get to you don't get to have control over this situation. Right. When you can have self-control and sit in a big chair, then you can sit in a big chair. But until that point, this is where you're going to be, because we need to be able to enjoy our meal. We need to let everybody around us enjoy their meal. And it's
right. So it's almost as if you're kindly setting the boundaries and patiently enforcing them so that you're not getting sucked into making them do what they need to do.
And you can't make them.
You can't make them at that point.
Yeah, because they will budging. And then it just causes misery to everyone around. Exactly. And I think, we could have been embarrassed and my husband could have succumbed to the stares of people as he's walking through a restaurant, carrying this child, but at that point, it was what was important for the child.
Right. It is.
And what's best for them. It doesn't matter if we're uncomfortable. It doesn't matter if the people around us are uncomfortable.
Right.
What matters is how are we going to help this child achieve the goal so that they can grow up to be a healthy human being.
Exactly. And we as parents, there's always that thing, you shouldn't pray for patience. I'm going to tell you what, God gives you patience whether you pray for it or not. And so we need to be loving and patient. And if we have to pray for that patience, then do it by all means, because you're going to get it anyway.
Right. You're going to have opportunity to grow in that area.
Exactly. So you might as well just be willing to submit to God's will. Another thing that is great and I know we're running out of time here, but another thing is to give support, but not criticize or correct behavior during a meltdown.
Right.
Wait until afterwards. And we found with one child in particular that we needed to wait 2 or 3 hours after the
Uh-huh.
meltdown, or even the next day, before we said, okay, we need to talk about this and why it happened, so that we could help that child work through the next time when this situation comes up. Maybe there's a way that they can move through it.
Right.
But also, okay, so this is what happened. This is what you were doing with the horrible, hateful words and whatever. This isn't acceptable. So, today, this is the consequence.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And
Right.
so, and the consequences don't have to be severe. It can just be taking away, maybe they don't watch TV today.
Yeah.
It's something that's important to them, but doesn't have to be you're grounded for a month.
Right.
Because I can guarantee you, with children with FASD, you are going to have another meltdown again the next day. You can't ground them for the rest of their life.
Right. And it's important to apply whatever consequence to a situation if you can fit it in with the actual consequence, with the actual infraction. And like, for instance, when we've had a child that has been melting down and chose to hurt somebody else, we'd say, you know what, I have to protect my children, and right now I have to protect them from you, so you need to go play by yourself for a while. They're gonna all play over here. And we've had kids that were very consistent in not caring about other people in the family, and they'd they'd have to eat dinner by themselves. They'd lose family privileges and stuff. Not that, we were always there for them and everything, but they would lose that privilege because they weren't behaving appropriately.
Right. And it's not like you're taking that privilege away forever.
Right.
It's just that moment in time.
Right. And one thing we do when we finally get to sit down and talk about it is we would say, what could we do differently? What different choices could you have made? And make them, they're the ones that need to say it, because that way it ingrains it in their mind and their thought process.
And one of the things as we're talking about that I have thought about is Kevin Lehman has a book. He's a psychologist, I believe.
Yes,
has a book out, Have a New Kid by Friday. I read that book not expecting to have a new kid by Friday, but because we were dealing with indivisible disabilities. But it was the only parenting method that fit with my child with invisible disabilities that actually made an impact and made it so that it was not always as confrontational for us as the parents.
Right.
They took the confrontation out of it.
Right. You
so
should put
that's
a link.
A good book to invest in.
Right. You should put a link on.
I should put a link on my website.
Yes,
okay, I'll work on that one.
No, you should.
Okay, and as just wanted to also, I've got a couple more points here of things that we can do. You can use calming essential oils during the meltdown by either getting it on your child, putting it on a cotton ball, sticking the cotton ball in their room, putting it in a diffuser, something that's going to get those calming oils into their system so that they can calm down, because they are not able to always calm down themselves without working through a cycle of emotions. And so if you can help that along with the essential oils. And along that line, you can also be proactive with the oils to avoid meltdowns by using them every day and using those oils that support that grounding and that ability to have control of their emotions.
Right.
And I'm going to give you some here in a minute. And then my last point is we need to stay calm as the parent. And that is extremely difficult when you're in the middle of a crisis situation, but you have to.
You have to.
And if you can't, you need to pray. And even if you can stay calm, you still need to pray.
Yes.
Because God allows these things. He's allowed our kids to be who they are. He's made them who they are. And He's allowed the trauma. He's allowed this stuff to help us grow as parents and adults, but to help our children grow too. Right. But we have to stay calm, and we cannot do that without His strength.
Exactly. Exactly. That is true.
So
I think that's key.
it is.
A calmer parent. Yes.
Yes. So as the parent, if you have trouble regulating, then get your oils out and use them on yourself too. Use them regularly every day because consistency is key.
Yeah, because it builds up in your system.
Well, it doesn't build up in your system, but it's key in helping you to have healthy emotions and, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So our oils that are good for calming and emotional balance are wild orange, balance, which is a blend, frankincense, steady blend, copaiba, and citrus oils.
Yeah.
You can use 1, you can use 3, you can use 5. You play around with it until you find what works for your children.
Yeah.
And as always, I use doTERRA essential oils because of their purity and their high standard. And you can visit my website and click on shop oils and open a wholesale account to get them, just like Costco, and get them at 25% discount.
Yeah.
So if you have questions on that, you can always message me from my website. So what blessing do we find, Cindy?
You know what? Meltdowns, as hard as they are, they allow us to have teachable moments and to really connect with our child and to share those hard emotions. There's things that, and our time is running out, but kids that have trauma, they have bottled up a lot of stuff, and it has to come out at some point.
It does.
And so what a better place, than in your home and in your arms and in your sight and everything. So that's it. And so our verse for today is Ephesians 4:2. Always be humble and gentle, be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love.
Yep. I love that.
Yeah.
So the Bible gives us parenting instructions all the time.
It does. It's great. So, okay. So let's go ahead and pray. Okay. Jesus, we thank you so much, Lord, for your magnificence, Lord, for how you mold each one of us into the person that you are calling us to be. And we want to lift up our families that are listening and pray that, Lord, that peace would just abound and joy would abound in their lives, Lord, and that each of their kiddos would be able to heal from past events and emotions, Lord, and that parents would respond appropriately and lovingly, Lord, and just as you do for us, Father, that they would be patient and just really help their kids to grow, Lord. Thank you so much for the privilege of being a mom. In your name we pray. Amen.
I love that. It is a privilege to be a mom.
It is. It is.
Yes. So you can find me at jodyrandolph.com, supporting adoptive moms, and Cindy at
nevereasyalwaysgood.com, real life with real faith.
And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.